So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pat you down real quick, okay? Just letting you know.
I'm not giving you. I'm not giving you position to touch.
No, I understand.
I'm not giving you.
No, sir. I understand. I'm gonna work on it.
Position to touch me. You touching me.
I understand.
My ball.
No, he's good.
How you doing today?
What's your name, brother? We're going to take a report for the pat down I just did.
For what? No, ain't no pat down for what? You ain't got no reason. You right here. You violating his civil rights right now. So
That's why we trying
No.
Alright guys, I'm gonna do a little breakdown on this video. It's coming from a channel named Lil Yeekwop. He's out there in Washington, D.C. and he actually has a few videos with D.C. Metro Police. So I'm gonna go over those right now. Okay, so we have someone on the ground getting arrested. We see a group of people on the other side of the car watching. Some trying to record with their cell phones. An officer approaches the man in the front of the group who's trying to record the arrest and shoves him back towards the street. The group steps up to defend the man who got pushed, and that's when a second cop stands up and approaches the group to back up his fellow officer. The group then walks around the car to the other side to continue trying to record, and that's when that second officer walks over to them again, gripping a baton in one hand and what seems to be like a flashlight in his other. Another man separate from the group walks up, and the second cop charges him ready to swing, even though the man was calm and clearly not even a threat. Then immediately after that, the same cop charges at a man and a woman and hits them both with what appears to be his flashlight, just for standing by and voicing their opinion. They weren't approaching the officers, they were clearly not a threat. The cop charged at both of them, hitting them for no reason, just because they were standing there and yelling. And then what makes it even worse is one of his fellow officers walks up to try to grab him and calm him down, but the bully cop just pushes him away too. So that bully cop starts walking away after hitting this man and woman for no reason. And then another cop comes up running behind the man who just got hit for no reason and grabs him and starts pushing him into the group of officers to try to arrest him too. The man literally did nothing. He was just standing there pointing and speaking words. That bully cop charged him, hit him and that woman, and then another cop comes running up from behind him out of nowhere and grabs him to arrest him. The video ends seconds later. As the camera pans back to the right, you can see that same bully cop chasing another man across the street, slamming him into a car.
Okay. I ain't doing illegal ass shit. Man, they can't do that, bro. Man, that's a fucking female. She can't even touch him. Fuck.
The original poster didn't give any information as to where this happened or names or badge numbers. All I know is that it was the DC police. The same DC police who are notorious not only for their excessive force, but their racially biased stop and frisk searches too. So I'm going to pull up these other two videos from that same channel to get you a little more familiar with those stop and frisk searches if you don't know what I'm talking about.
What's your name?
How you doing today?
What's your name, brother? We're going to take a report for the pat down I just did.
For what?
The pat down.
No, ain't no pat down for what? You ain't got no reason. You right here. You violating the civil rights right now. So it's done to
That's
that.
what we trying
No,
to
no,
do.
no, 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 no.
Sir, how you doing, man? Did you hear what I asked you?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Did you hear what I asked you? So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pat you down real quick, okay? Just letting you know.
I'm not giving you position to touch.
No, I understand.
I'm not giving you.
No, sir, I understand. I'm a worker on it.
To touch me, you touching me.
I understand.
My phone.
No, he's good. He's good. I got you. Hey, this is what I do. You want me to give you all your information? I'll give you report numbers. You just want us to roll? That's it. I mean, we do it either way.
Hey, stop smoking.
He's good. He's good. I appreciate you.
Y'all have a good day, guys. Thank you.
Him too. Oh, snap.
This is Officer Anthony Delborrell of the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. Originally from Laurel, Maryland, Delborrell played football in college as a defensive back and majored in sociology, which is ironic given that sociology is supposed to help you understand and relate to people of various races, cultures, and backgrounds. So if you seriously studied sociology and came out thinking your best contribution to society is adding to an already oppressive and racially biased system like the police, then you clearly missed all the important lessons of sociology. I was able to find 12 arrest records from Officer Delborrell just in the last 2 years, mostly pertaining to possession and gun possession charges. So it seems like he gets a lot of arrests off these stop and frisk pat-down searches. But it's not just Officer Delborrell. DC police have an extensive history of abusing their authority when it comes to these stop and frisk searches, oftentimes conducting them in an overly aggressive manner and without probable cause.
How's everybody doing?
We coolin'.
We just want to rep to whoever owns the Volvo, man, about the tents. That's it.
It all started calm enough. A couple of D.C. police officers approach a group of African-American men sitting on a street corner. They say they're only interested in that Volvo with windows tinted too dark.
We're not worried about a little bit of weed or anything, the open container or whatever. That's it, just the tents, man.
30 seconds later, it becomes clear those officers are interested in more than just window tinting.
All right, everybody got IDs and stuff like that.
What's the call, sir?
Backup arrives, and with it, a new question for one of the men standing in the group.
Don't show him, bro. Don't show him.
The officer was asking a man just off camera, that guy right there in the white shirt, to lift his shirt and show his waistband so he could check to see if he had a gun in it, otherwise known as a stop and frisk. Something police only have the right to do if the officer reasonably suspects the person is in possession of a weapon and a danger. Our year-long WUSA 9 investigation uncovered 8 out of 10 people stopped and frisked by D.C. police are African American, and that the department has failed to follow a law passed in 2016 to better track stop and frisk and protect against racial bias, which is what many of the men on this corner thought was happening here.
I ain't commit no crime. I ain't consented no search.
But the man in the white shirt does consent to a search, which turns up what appears to be a handgun in his waistband.
All right, so everybody, let's calm down, okay?
Officers then tell the crowd they are using the discovery of that gun as justification to search everyone else.
Come on, show me your waistband.
Don't touch him, bro. We ain't even doing nothing.
That's your waistband, sir.
What's the call, bro?
Well, right now we just found one.
I don't care. I don't know him.
And he's hanging out with y'all.
He's not hanging with us.
But no one else consented to be frisked. Over and over again, telling the officers that guy in the white shirt, the one with the apparent gun, was not a part of their group.
They saying they think that he was up here hanging with us. We don't even know that guy.
As the situation escalates,
Go that way, go that way.
that man in the white shirt simply walks away and drives off.
You need to back up, okay? You need to back up. Let's go back.
Late Monday, we found out why. D.C. police telling us that gun they pulled out of the man's waistband wasn't a handgun, it was a BB gun.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Hold.
The fallout from this cell phone video, which we first showed you back in February 2018, continued Wednesday, with a source telling WUSA 9 a D.C. Metropolitan Police Department hearing board has upheld the firing of Sean LOJACONO. Although LOJACONO was disciplined for this search, the department ultimately moved to fire him for a second similar search, caught on body-worn camera video but not publicly available. That search, like the first, focused on the groin and crotch area, even though neither man was placed under arrest at the time, which is policy. We questioned LOJACONO about that search back in March.
Do you feel like the actions that were seen on that video were just?
Again, I have no comment. I'm about to go into my hearing, so everything that needs to be said will be said in there.
What LOJACONO said in that closed appeal hearing, almost as explosive as the video itself, testifying that he has performed hundreds of searches just like that one, even though it violated his training at the police academy and the general orders of the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. LOJACONO said he was taught by veteran officers aggressively working the groin area in a search was the only way to ensure a subject wasn't hiding contraband, even when they had not yet been placed under arrest, adding that as a young rookie, those veteran officers told him to, quote, "forget everything you learned at the academy. That's not how it's done."
In 2016, the NEAR Act was passed in Washington, D.C., which required D.C. police to start reporting and collecting more detailed information about these stop and frisk searches, including why they stopped the citizen, what race they were, how long the stop was, if there was a search, and if so, what was the probable cause. But for over 3 years after the NEAR Act was passed, D.C. police failed to follow the law and did not collect nor release the stop and frisk data, according to a lawsuit from the American Civil Liberties Union in D.C. So in 2016, the NEAR Act was passed to try to give more accountability and transparency, one part pertaining specifically to these stop and frisk searches. In 2017, an officer was caught on cell phone video conducting an improper and inappropriate stop and frisk search and was eventually fired for that stop. The District of Columbia had to pay that man $600,000 in a settlement. In 2018, the ACLU and other activist groups filed FOIA requests seeking the data DC police was supposed to collect and release on these stop and frisk searches, but they were ignored, so they filed a lawsuit against the mayor and the chief of police for failure to comply with the law. In 2019, a court ordered DC police to comply with the NEAR Act within 28 days and release the data. Once the data was released, it was found that DC police, according to their own numbers, have been disproportionately conducting stop and frisk searches on African American citizens. Data from the DC police stops in 2020 show that police continued to disproportionately stop and frisk members of the Black community. And in 2021, the ACLU had to sue the DC police again for only publishing some of the data it was legally required to make available to the public. Once again, showing a huge lack of transparency and accountability. This is the same DC police that's been caught on camera multiple times arresting or even threatening to arrest citizens just for filming them.
Description? Stop talking, please. You are videotaping this crime scene, right? This is a crime scene. You're videotaping it right now. That makes you part of it. And your little camera phone, that could be used as evidence. Do you understand?
Let me. Hey, don't put your phone in my face. Let me find out. Let me find out.
Back up, please.
Back up. I got him on camera.
The same DC police who came under fire for an attempted traffic stop in 2020 that ended with a man dying after crashing his moped into another car while the police were chasing him, which is against their policy. 2 officers have been charged for second-degree murder, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice in this case for the man's death and for allegedly tampering with the case by withholding information, deactivating their body cams, and attempting to destroy evidence. Not surprisingly enough, that isn't the first time DC police have been involved in a fatal accident resulting in the death of a community member. In 2018, a man was killed after his dirt bike collided with a DC police cruiser under suspicious circumstances. And in that incident, only days after the man died, DC police officers were caught illegally searching his property.
Almost 1 year ago, Jeffrey Price died when his dirt bike collided with an MPD cruiser. A week later, his family's grief was interrupted when MPD officer Joseph Gupton showed up to search Price's mother's property in Deanwood. Gupton did not have a warrant.
Excuse me, sir. I don't want you on my property.
Gupton's actions shocked the Price family, who said he never explained what he was looking for or how he might find it. So they decided to team up with the ACLU to sue Gupton and DC for violating their Fourth Amendment rights.
I feel that it was very disrespectful.
Denise Price, Jeffrey's mother, told us that search changed how she feels around police officers. She now has trouble sleeping. Her anxiety is higher.
It's just that the trust right now have been lost when it comes to me and police officers. In order for them to be respected, they have to show respect.
The Price family's lawsuit would let the court decide how much to give them. But their lawyers say it's about more than just money.
This lawsuit is really about changing the culture at MPD, protecting the rights of community members in Ward 7 and 8.
We're not treated like the other wards are.
This is the same DC police who were caught racing their police cruisers down residential streets and ended up crashing into each other, totaling both police vehicles.
Broke on Sunday. The D.C. police officers accused of drag racing on a neighborhood street still have not been given tickets for what ended in a crash which totaled 2 patrol cars.
D.C. police have not answered why this is taking so long. What these officers are accused of could amount to aggravated reckless driving, a crime here in D.C., but we've learned no tickets have been issued so far. An internal email from a commander saying the officers thought it was a good idea to race each other. And the crash report reveals one driver turned into the path of the other police car, hitting a fence in the process. Sources have said that cars were going about 60 miles per hour, well over the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. Fox 5 consulted with 2 criminal defense attorneys who tell us it's odd that the officers haven't been charged yet. We asked them if the officers are getting special treatment and that's why they haven't been charged yet. They didn't respond to that specific question.
The same DC police who came under fire only 3 months ago for their excessive force and the arrest of a man where officers pinned him up against a fence and repeatedly punched him in the face while he was restrained.
The attorneys for Johnson say the assault by the officer fractured bones in his face and that he may need surgery.
And if you thought it couldn't get any worse than that, in September of this year, a large group of former and current black female DC police officers came forward announcing their plans to sue the DC Police Department over numerous allegations of racial and sexual discrimination, hostile work environment, and a male-dominated culture of intimidation and retaliation, specifically targeting black female officers. These claims coming from recruits all the way up to the Assistant Chief of Police herself, Chanel Dickerson.
Good morning. I am Chanel Dickerson, a black woman who happens to be an Assistant Chief of Police of the Metropolitan Police Department. When I think about the sergeant who made the male officers who were assigned with me walk a footbeat so he can meet me privately at places, I think about the lieutenant who had a substantiated sexual harassment complaint against him from another district across town and was just transferred across town so he can comment on my buttocks, on my breasts, and about the sexual acts that he wanted to perform on me. A community member was so appalled that they wrote in a complaint, but nothing happened. I moved forward to my position as Assistant Chief. And I must admit, it's the most challenging position I've held at the police department. It's very difficult to be at this level and see the disparate treatment amongst people of color, particularly black women, speak out about it, and nothing happens.
And there's several times that all of us have endured sexual harassment and or just intimidation in itself and bullying. And we're tired of it. We're tired of being bullied by a system that don't want to change, a culture that don't want to change, that they want to continue to operate in the good old boy system. And we had enough. We had enough of it.
Another female had to endure a male official walking up to her and forcibly putting his tongue in her mouth. Another male manager walking by and taking his hand and grabbing her buttocks as he walked by and just smiled. We reported these things to management, to our EEO, and we were ignored.
Just like the ACLU and other activist groups were ignored by the DC police when they FOIA requested that stop and frisk search data.
And I can speak expressively to that point because I worked at the police academy, and about 300 black female officers came through me, and probably a third of those were females. And I've gotten calls. I got one call at 2 o'clock in the morning where a recruit, then officer, she's sworn now, called me and told me that her commander called her and asked her if he could meet with her. I have a daughter that's a law enforcement officer with MPD at the 1st District. I have a niece that's at the 6th District as a reserve officer. My daughter has spoke to me about feeling uncomfortable around male officers. So I can tell you that there are female officers, black female officers, that are currently putting on that badge and doing their job under the same stress and duress that we did. And it needs to stop.
And in one of the most recent incidents involving DC police, which happened on October 18th, one officer shot and killed an unarmed man seemingly without warning while responding to a domestic dispute at an apartment complex.
I'm looking for my money and my stuff. I don't know, I'm looking for my money and my stuff. Then you come back to the police.
That's looking at my house. That money
This all, I'm looking for my money. I'm looking for my stuff. Oh, you got your money. It's not broke. This right here. It ain't broke with money. I'm gonna fix that. Look how you treat it. Come on, dude. I'm looking for my money. I'm looking for my money. Because I'm looking for my stuff. You know that. I'm looking for my stuff. No, don't do that. I'm looking for my... Listen, listen. But don't do me like that. Why you give me the handcuffs on me?
Wait, hold on.
Back up.
Back up now.
Apartment.
DC police have an extensive history of abusing their authority, whether it comes to excessive force, police misconduct, cover-ups, racial and sexual discrimination, and even retaliation against community members and their own officers.
Larry, yeah, it is the second time in a week that activists say they have uncovered patches, banners, imagery they say betrays a culture of violence and racism here in the Metropolitan Police Department. Last week it was a t-shirt that used a symbol that is used by white nationalists, worn by a Metropolitan Police Department officer in Superior Court here that the activists took the picture of. Now they've got a dozen complaints going into the Office of Police Complaints here today, talking about another image that they're alarmed by. This is the image here. It is for the Narcotics and Special Investigations Division. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's a skull and crossbones, and right in the middle of the skull is a gunshot hole. And there are two guns here, handcuffs, and down here it says vest up, one in the chamber. The activists say this revels in the kind of violence that the police officers should not be reveling in. But take a look also at this image of this t-shirt that was out last week. In that t-shirt that was worn by the police officer here at court, and that the chief of police called disgraceful, the officer ended up being suspended, are the words power shift. And inside the O in the words power shift, there is a cross. You probably can't see it very well, but it is an archaic cross that is used often these days by white nationalists.
How can the residents of the District of Columbia, which is an extremely diverse area, feel at all safe knowing that there are units that use racist imagery, that there are multiple units that are now celebrating a culture of death and some even celebrating kill shots? What is going on inside the Metropolitan Police? How is it possible that people can feel any form of safety in a diverse city like the District of Columbia when we know that we have these police officers with these views?
Let me know what you think below. Let me know what you think the worst case was. I'm going to do some update videos in the future for some of these lawsuits that are still pending.
And officers, as you stated, not only are they prevented and handcuffed from doing their jobs out on the street, but like you said, they're also afraid to go out there and do that because they've created these systems that allow people to complain on police officers and have police officers investigated to the extent that they could lose their jobs, and they create liability that really threatens their livelihood.
No, I'm not giving you position to touch.
No, I understand.
I'm not giving you.
No, sir, I understand. I'm a worker on it.
Position to touch me. You touching me.
I understand.
And it's just such an amazing feeling being able to do that every night or every day that you come to work.
For what?
A city like no other needs officers like no other.
For what? You ain't got no reason. You right here. You violating the civil rights right now. So it's none of that. No.